The smoke from the Great Invasion eventually cleared over the winding alleys of Rocinha, but the scent of betrayal lingered in the humid air much longer than the sharp tang of gunpowder. The ADA fortress had held. They had repelled the barbarian horde at the gates, proving that their dominion over the hill was absolute in terms of firepower. Yet the foundations of their concrete empire had suffered irreparable cracks. To the common observer, it was a victory. To the shadow kings directing the board from the iron cages of the Bangu penitentiary, it was a near-fatal symptom of a systemic disease. In the weeks following the attack, a suffocating paranoia descended upon the hill like a heavy fog. The favela did not celebrate, it held its breath. The reconstruction of the damaged sectors began immediately, but the mortar used to fix the walls was mixed with suspicion. The leadership, communicating through smuggled cell phones that buzzed like angry hornets in the night, reached a cold verdict. The invasion had only been possible because the perimeter was porous. The pact with the Third Command, once hailed as a diplomatic masterpiece intended to secure the ADA's borders, was reevaluated. What was once an asset was now deemed a parasitic liability. The order came down from the prison cells, whispering through the wire, "Trust is a luxury we can no longer afford. Prune the dead branches." Mateo, having survived the crucible of the frontline defense, found no solace in the aftermath. His promotion to gerente, manager of the Valaun sector, was not a reward for heroism, but a heavier chain binding him to the machine. He now stood closer to the sun, where the heat of scrutiny was most intense. He had shed his naivete during the invasion, replacing it with a cold, functional cynicism. He understood that in this ecosystem, upward mobility required stepping over the bodies of former colleagues. His new office was a plastic table in the back of a bar, his ledger a notebook filled with debts and death. His first assignment in this elevated rank was a test of his absolute loyalty. The target was Elias, a veteran operator who served as the primary liaison with the Third Command. Elias was not an enemy soldier. He was a man Mateo had shared beers with after long shifts, a man whose children played in the same dusty alleys as Mateo's nieces. Elias was the human face of the alliance, but the logic of the faction superseded human connection. The alliance was dead, and therefore the bridge had to be burned. The execution of the order was not a grand explosive battle like the invasion had been. It was a cold piece of calculated theater. Mateo lured Elias to a meeting under the pretense of renegotiating drug routes that had been disturbed by the recent fighting. They met in the skeletal remains of an unfinished slab house on the highest peak of the hill. The location offered a breathtaking panoramic view of Rio de Janeiro, the Christ statue glowing in the distance, the glittering expanse of Ipanema Beach below. It was a view reserved for the rich, momentarily enjoyed by the damned. The conversation was a hollow ritual. Mateo offered Elias a cigarette, his hand steady, though his stomach churned with acid. They spoke of routes, of police schedules, of profits. Elias seemed tired, his shoulders slumped under the weight of the recent war. He spoke of retiring, of moving to the countryside. He didn't see the shift in Mateo's posture. He didn't see the moment Mateo ceased to be his friend and became only the instrument of the ADA. When Mateo finally drew his weapon, time seemed to stretch into an infinity of silence. There was no cinematic standoff, no shouted accusations of betrayal. Mateo simply stood up. Elias looked at the gun, then at Mateo's eyes, and understood. There was a flicker of profound sadness, a resignation to the brutal arithmetic governing their lives. "Make it quick, brother," Elias whispered, turning his gaze back to the glittering city lights below. The single gunshot was swallowed instantly by the ambient noise of the favela night, a motorcycle backfiring in the distance, the heavy bass of a baile funk party starting up 3 streets away. Elias slumped forward, the bridge finally burned. Matteo stood over the body for a long moment before signaling his crew to clean the scene. He felt a chilling numbness spread through his chest, a defensive layer of ice encasing his heart. He had secured his position in the hierarchy, trading a piece of his humanity for a few more square meters of concrete dominion. The purge sent a necessary shockwave through the hill. The alliance was formally dissolved in blood, and the message was clear to every soldier, lookout, and dealer. Loyalty to the ADA was absolute, superseding all former friendships and external treaties. The faction stood alone again, isolated but fiercely unified by fear and strategic necessity. The golden age of diplomacy was dead. The age of iron had begun. Matteo lit another cigarette, the flame illuminating a face that had aged a decade in a single month. He was a king in the concrete empire now, but he knew the truth. He was just another prisoner, his cell merely larger than the ones in Bangu.